Breaking tonight, President Trump not slowing down after a whirlwind week in the White House, and neither are the protesters. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us in our nation's capital tonight. We begin with breaking news. Hundreds of people at New York Kennedy's airport and other airports protesting at this hour. They're demonstrating against the detainment of refugees who are being held after the president's executive action cracking down on immigration from Muslim-majority countries. We'll talk about all of this with Rudy Giuliani live in a moment. Plus, I'll take you inside Kellyanne Conway's White House office for a two-part interview tonight. But first, my opening statement. Like it or not, our laws are about to be enforced. Those who live in sanctuary cities that harbor illegals are now teed up to lose federal law enforcement funding and protection. And each and every one of you has a decision to make. Everyone in those 300-odd sanctuary counties and cities. So, what's more important to you? Would you rather protect illegals who flaunted our laws to come here and some who committed crimes while here, or law-abiding American citizens who shouldn't have to lose police protection because they happen to live in a sanctuary city? Now, if you believe in America and everything we stand for, it's time to demand an end to these criminal enclaves. In his first whirlwind week, President Trump signed an executive order directing the withholding of grant money from sanctuary cities who refuse to comply with federal immigration laws. The re-implementation of secure communities, where state and local governments share fingerprints to help actually identify undocumented immigrants, to force other countries to actually take back criminals by using leverage like withholding U.S. visas, and a new victim program for Americans who have been victimized by illegals, and now weekly statistics of Americans victimized by illegals living in sanctuary cities, and finally, an end to the Obama policy of catch and release at the border. So, you can march and you can hate and you can shame and you can demonize the 45th president. But I've got news for you. Law and order is back in the West. And namby-pamby liberal mayors like de Blasio in New York, Ed Lee in San Francisco, and Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, who say their policies simply improve relations between the immigrant community and law enforcement, are now putting American citizens in jeopardy of losing law enforcement protection. Now, I admire the kumbaya goal of community law enforcement identifying criminal activity by illegals, but it doesn't work. 32 years as a prosecutor, judge, and DA in a county of about 1 million tells me otherwise. Case in point. An illegal beat up and robbed every Friday, every payday. I never heard a word about him. I only found out about him when his illegal immigrant robber finally killed him, brutally. He was more afraid of the illegal than he was of the police. So, if you're an illegal and friends with a local cop and you don't get deported, great. But that doesn't mean that you're going to rat on another illegal. Do you really think that one illegal is going to turn in another illegal, especially when they both live in a sanctuary city? The victim knows that the criminal illegal is only going to be cut loose anyway. The sanctuary city promised not to deport him and the illegal. And an illegal smart enough to avoid apprehension to get here in the first place knows that the criminal illegal has a sanctuary haven forever. So why even have a sanctuary city in the hopes of improving relations when an illegal is more afraid of the other illegal than he is of the police? and so is never going to risk turning in another illegal who will be free to come after him. The whole thing is a farce. And by the way, for those of you who want to protect illegals and get them to cooperate with law enforcement, you don't need a blanket sanctuary city. The law is already in place. It's called a U visa. I used it as DA. If you're illegal and you want to report a crime, this is a visa that protects you and allows you and your family sanctuary from deportation. It's already the law. So in the end, sanctuary cities are safe havens for criminal aliens and not their innocent victims, legal or illegal. Juan Lopez Sanchez, deported 5 times, a career criminal, the one who killed Kate Steinle, admitted he actually came to San Francisco because it was a sanctuary city. How many parents do we have to parade in front of you to show you the loss of lives by those protected by these liberal mayors? And now Mexico gets in the mix, and they say that a wall and a crackdown on illegal immigrants is an affront to Mexico. Really? They actually want us to have sanctuary cities. I have an idea. How about Mexico pay a tax on the billions of dollars that are sent to them by the illegals working here? Or better yet, maybe Mexico should change their laws so that if you cross their border illegally, you aren't sentenced to 10 years in jail. And what makes Mexico think they have a superior right to protect their sovereignty than we do? So enough of this benign-sounding sanctuary city nonsense that protects criminals. At what point do we stop the killings and the violence? Are you actually willing to risk it all to protect the criminal illegal? And who would you put in that spot? Who would it be okay to lose? Your son? Your mother? Or as Steinle did, his daughter, Catherine, who died in his arms as she walked along the San Francisco pier with him? And to all those mayors like de Blasio in New York, like the ones in Los Angeles and D.C., who say they won't retreat as a sanctuary city, my question to you is this. Who put you in office? Who did you take an oath to protect? Do you understand that the first order of government is the protection of its citizens, American citizens? That's your job. So you have a decision to make. Are you willing to lose law enforcement dollars that pays for the cops in your city to protect Americans in your effort to resist the deportation of criminals who are here illegally? And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And breaking news just into Fox News Channel. A federal U.S. judge has just granted an emergency stay to temporarily allow people who landed in the U.S. with valid visas to stay in the country. This will affect the people detained at these airports where people are protesting tonight. Joining me now to talk about this is former mayor of New York City and advisor to President Trump on cybersecurity, Rudy Giuliani. All right, good evening,
Judge, how are
Mr.
you?
Mayor. I am fine. This just breaking news during my open. Federal judge signing this stay. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I think it's, first of all, I thought your opening was absolutely a terrific explanation of what's been wrong with this country for 30 years. Good deal of time that you were district attorney. I was U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, and I couldn't get the immigration service to deport the criminals who were coming out of jail. They put them on bail and they commit more crimes, and then I'd have to arrest them again. And it's totally absurd. What Donald Trump wants to do, what Homeland Security wants to do under him, is focus on the criminal illegal aliens and get them out of the United States. Who possibly could object to that? I have no idea what these mayors are thinking about.
I don't know what they're thinking about either. And I have the same problem. I would seek to have someone deported after they serve their jail time. Their country didn't want them, so the United States would say, okay, we'll keep them.
Well, then what we should do is, first of all, we should develop detention centers for them. They shouldn't be catch and release. They shouldn't go to jail for 5 years for assault or attempted murder or selling drugs and then go back out on the street. They should go into a detention center. They should be held. They should be held, and then we should exert all the pressure that we have, which is enormous, by the way, to deport them to the countries where they're supposed to go to. Because
in fact, in the executive action that the President Trump just signed, he talked about limiting visas from those countries that refuse to accept criminals back to their countries. They say, these countries that say, oh, no, he's too dangerous for us to take back. Well, here's the deal. Now we're going to pull you by the short hairs. You can't come here. But that makes perfect sense. And now we've got a president who gets it. Thank goodness.
That actually describes his whole first week in office, which is negotiating in the best interest of the United States of America, not the rest of the world, but protecting our citizens from what's happened with illegal criminal immigrants and in a lot of other areas. This last week, I think, has been a week where he has done more than Roosevelt did in 100 days.
I don't think there's any question. He not only hit the ground running, he's been airborne since the first 24 hours.
He doesn't sleep.
Mayor,
I know this.
I know that.
He doesn't. We both know him personally, right? This man doesn't sleep.
It's unbelievable. But I want to ask you about this ban. I want to ask you about this ban and the protests. Does the ban have anything to do with religion? How did the president decide the 7 countries? I understand the permanent ban on the refugees.
Okay.
Talk to me.
I'll tell you the whole history of it. So when he first announced it, he said Muslim ban. He called me up. He said, put a commission together. Show me the right way to do it legally. I put a commission together with Judge Mukasey, with Congressman McCall, Pete King, a whole group of other very expert lawyers on this. And what we did was we focused on, instead of religion, danger. The areas of the world that create danger for us, which is a factual basis, not a religious basis. Perfectly legal, perfectly sensible, and that's what the ban is based on. It's not based on religion. It's based on places where there are substantial evidence that people are sending terrorists into our country.
Well, let me ask you this. When I was kind of surprised to see that Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are not on the list. And yet, we know that the San Bernardino attack by Syed Farouk and Malik, I think her name was Tashfeen Malik, she was born in Pakistan and then came through Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, why were some of those countries left out?
I'll tell you about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is going through a massive change. I think the kingdom, particularly under the new prince, has a real understanding that we're dealing with a massive radical Islamic terrorist problem. It is not the old Saudi Arabia. This isn't the Saudi Arabia of 2000, 2001, 2002. President Obama is dealing with a new Saudi Arabia, which is
President Trump.
President Trump, rather, is dealing with a very different Saudi Arabia than President Obama was dealing with, and a Saudi Arabia that has much closer relationships with Israel and with us if we know how to use it correctly. Pakistan, I would have to know more about. That troubles me a little bit like it troubles you.
All right. Mr. Mayor, I can't believe I'm not in New York tonight. You and I are always trying to connect.
I don't know. We miss each other all the time.
All right. It's good to see you, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
anytime.
Thank you. Time for a different opinion. Joining me now is former foreign policy advisor to Barack Obama presidential campaign, and former State Department official David Tafuri. All right, David, good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
The first time. Okay, now we just found out that a federal judge has put a ban, or a stay, I should say, on the president's ban. And it's a temporary stay. Do you know who the judge is, the federal judge who put the stay on the ban?
I don't. I learned about this from watching the beginning of your show, and I tried to look really quickly.
Maybe we can find out who put the temporary stay on that. But what is your opinion of this ban, and are you surprised that the stay has been implemented? Talk to me.
This executive order is a mess. The reason is that it doesn't accomplish the U.S. interests in protecting us from terrorism. Let me give you an example. This bans visits from people from 7 different countries. But the last terrorist attacks in the U.S., San Bernardino, which you mentioned, Orlando, the New York, New Jersey bombings, the people who did those terrorist attacks didn't come from any of these 7 countries. They weren't included at all. And yet the ban is actually too broad. It prevents people like
Tashfeen Malik. Okay, she is from 2 of the countries that were not included.
Right.
Okay.
The San Bernardino, Orlando bombers, they came from Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Don't you think that the White House, don't you think that they have some sense of what's going on, that they have intelligence that we don't have, that maybe they have stuff that's more contemporary than you and I have from months ago?
We have great people in our intelligence community, great people in the military working on this. My guess is the people that wrote this are not those people. The people who wrote this executive order probably haven't been to the Middle East, don't know that much about the Middle East. They've fashioned an order. Because they've fashioned an order that does not protect us and actually bans huge groups of people who are actually our friends, who we need to support us in the fight against ISIS.
Why do you assume that people from Somalia are our friends when, the number, you go to Minnesota, we just had an attack there on Thanksgiving. There's a lot of assaults and a lot of attacks by some of these, but I know what you're saying.
All people from Somalia are good people. Of course, there are bad people in Somalia. Of course, there are bad people in Iraq. But there are good people in Iraq who work with us, who work with the U.S. military.
Okay.
We've ended a refugee resettlement program that was designed to reward the Iraqis who helped the U.S. military in the fight against ISIS. Let me give you an example. I served in Iraq in 06 and 07, the height of the war. I had 2 Iraqis who helped me. Their lives became in danger because they were helping Americans. I and others helped them get through the refugee resettlement program. They were resettled here in the U.S. as a reward to their good service and risking their lives and helping us. And they're good, law-abiding citizens now. Every single military person, every military person who's served in Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else in the Middle East will tell you that we need a refugee resettlement program. We need to reward the people who help us.
We got to go. Just so you know, there are exceptions on a case-by-case basis, and I suspect that that's the kind of guy, just like the guy who was the translator for the Army, former U.S. Army translator, got in today. The order makes it clear.
But he got stuck for a couple of days.
You know what? Deal with it. We're in the middle of a terrorist war.
There are women and kids stuck at the airport. Why fashion an executive order that prevents grandmas from coming to the U.S.?
You know what? It's just like they told us grandmothers were coming from Central America, and they were all teenagers and men. But anyway, David, I love having you on. You're smart. We'll have you back. David Tafuri. All right, next, more on the breaking news from the nation's airports. Plus, one-on-one in the White House with the president's right-hand woman. She's talking tough on immigration.
You have an entryway here, but you can't break the law and then allow these liberal elites to tell everyone, Jeanine, illegal immigrants are here to do the jobs Americans just won't do.
My interview with Kellyanne Conway from inside her West Wing office is next. You can't miss it. Stay right where you are. Welcome back to Justice. Another live look at Kennedy Airport in New York. One of several seeing protests tonight. A federal judge has just granted a stay to temporarily allow people who landed in the U.S. with valid visas to stay in the country. This will affect the people detained at these airports where people are protesting tonight. Meantime, I'm here in Washington this week because I visited the White House and had the opportunity to sit down with Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. Take a look. It's been a whirlwind week. I can't even believe that it has been a week given all the president's done.
How do you feel? It's classic President Donald Trump style, though, Jeanine. It's exactly who he's been in business, as a candidate, as president-elect, and now president. He's all about action and impact. I mean, Washington is just not accustomed to somebody who comes here owing them nothing and owing the American people the opportunity to make good on those promises and those plans. And he's done everything from job creation to wage boosting to protecting us from radical Islamic terrorism by putting out extreme vetting, from swearing in a couple of the cabinet secretaries. Let's just throw in a visit from the UK's Prime Minister for good measure, calls with heads of state. It's just remarkable to watch him in action, and it really makes us all step up our game.
Do you get the sense as you watch him, and I've known him for many, many years, that there'll come a point in time when some of his staff will say, I don't know if I can keep up with this man?
Oh, sure, but too bad for us. Too bad for us. I've always thought, even when I had my own research company for 21 years, that the boss should always work the hardest. You know, your name's on the door, you're in charge, so work the hardest. But he puts that at a different echelon altogether. But you can't help but want to meet and exceed his expectations and try to at least keep pace with his thinking, with his activity. It's a joy, and the country's responding. You know, you see some of the haters out there, but no mind, because he's their president too, and he's doing things that will help them as well. What I want people to know is that for every loudmouth hater you hear, there've got to be 10 or more people now who are calling and emailing and writing and stopping and saying thank you to any of us, to him, to tell him thank you. People feel there's a new vibrancy, a new buoyancy, a new opportunity. He's not just changing the tone in Washington, he's changing the whole content.
And the whole idea of his doing what he said he would do is just kind of stunning to the American people. Well, oh my goodness, not only is he doing what he said he would do, but he's doing a lot of it in the first week.
Right.
Well, let's talk about what happened with Mexico and the talk now of possibly a 20% tax on some of the goods coming from Mexico, and then, you know, critics saying, well, that, whether it's 20 or any other number, I think Sean Spicer may have suggested 20, that burden may ultimately be held by or burdened on the American people. Is he running this, like he, the president, like a business?
Sure, he can run the country like a business, but he also knows it's a country. On Mexico, what our press secretary Sean Spicer said is one of the possible options. Our chief of staff, Ryan Spears, has said the 20% tariff is on the buffet of options. And that's the way leaders look at things. They say, what are all the possibilities here? I want to weigh the consequences, the options, the possibilities before I make a choice on behalf of the American people.
Who needs the other one more? Does the United States need Mexico, or does Mexico need the United States?
Well, if you look at the trade imbalance, $60 billion of a trade deficit each year, and you see these statistics, Jeanine, that the greatest source of revenue for Mexico appears to be money that Mexicans in America send back to Mexico.
Well, then let me ask you, why is it that the Mexicans seem so put off by the idea of the United States as a sovereign nation putting up a wall, the United States saying we do not want illegal immigrants here, the United States doing what it can to stop illegal drug cartels from coming into this country, and the United States from taking care of its own borders and preventing people from sending money into another country?
Well, they're just not used to it. But look, Donald Trump has said as president that he will put America first. And 65% of Americans say that they really like and agree with that as one of his plans, as one of his mottos, if you will, America first. That was in a poll this week that was released. And there's something to that. People know what that means. It means that we're a sovereign nation, and sovereign nations must have physical borders. And we as a nation, as the president said in his inaugural address, we have spent billions of dollars helping other countries protect their own borders and their own sovereignty, and we're not doing it here. It's just common sense to a lot of the American people. We want to have a good relationship with all of our neighbors, Canada, Mexico. President Trump said on Friday in his press conference with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Theresa May, he said, we'd like to have good relationships with all countries. Probably won't happen, but we'll try. And that, of course, includes Mexico. But this is all about being fair to the American people, to the American borders, to the American worker.
Well, then why do you think that there are some mayors from the large cities, American mayors, who are like, we want to protect the illegals and we're willing to risk the loss of federal block grants, law enforcement monies? What is that about?
It seems to be a sort of misread on the public mood, first of all. Are they really serious that they're going to harbor and, quote, protect illegal immigrants like the man who murdered Kate Steinle in front of her father? in San Francisco almost 2 years ago. That poor woman should be a household name across this country, and we should hold her up as a symbol of everything that's wrong with sanctuary cities. And if people say, Judge Jeanine, well, that's just one example. We have many examples. At the Department of Homeland Security this past week, President Trump stood along with these angel moms, all of whom have lost their children to illegal immigrants who should not have been here. And so that is not all illegal immigrants, that is not most immigrants in this country. But these mayors saying that they're going to put the protection of illegal immigrants above the protection of their own people and their own city's resources, they're flagrantly flouting the law. Exactly. And we should think about what that means. Maybe some are making political statements, maybe some really believe that they're protecting the illegal immigrants, but those folks broke the law. You want to be in America? We've got the most generous immigration laws in the world, and we have big hearts as well. We're compassionate. Go stand in line. Go do it the way our ancestors did it, and most people's ancestors did it. You have an entryway here, but you can't break the law and then allow these liberal elites to tell everyone, Jeanine, illegal immigrants are here to do the jobs Americans just won't do. You know what many Americans have stood up and said, particularly given the Trump effect on this issue? Excuse me, I will do that job. I want to do that job to support myself and my family, but I'm not doing it for $5 an hour under the table.
And that's not all. More with Kellyanne Conway coming up.
What about your kids? Are you worried about them?
I'm a mother. Of course I'm worried about them. I'm an Italian mother.
Kellyanne the mother in the public glare. Part 2 of my White House interview is next. You'll even find out who once worked in her White House office. And you're going to be really surprised. Then, my all-star political panel is here to weigh in on the president's actions on extreme vetting and sanctuary cities. You can bet on some fireworks. Stay with us on Justice. Welcome back to Justice. Here's part 2 now of my White House interview with Kellyanne Conway, where we talked about her history-making role in the Trump administration.
Kellyanne, the woman. We've heard a lot about White House counsel. You are counselor to the president. Very different. Don McCann is White House counsel. Your job is very different.
Yes.
Very unusual.
You're sitting in an office, which I'm yet to decorate. I'm terrible. I can't decorate, design, or draw anything. So, but I'm sure my kids will start hanging things on the wall soon, Judge. But this is an office that was previously occupied by Valerie Jarrett, very close, if not the closest advisor to President Obama. And before her, Karl Rove. And before that, here's a great piece of trivia, First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton. Remember, she famously had an office in the West Wing, even though the East Wing is where the First Lady's office is.
So the significance of that is that you are very close to the Oval Office.
Yes.
How far is that?
Well, more importantly, I'm very close to the president. I think we're close. Well, it's a floor below. He's right below.
Do you have like a winding staircase? Is
no,
this like
but I can get there in.
Scandal,
I can get there.
roll down?
I can get there in 12. I can get there in 12 minutes. Scandal's one of the only shows I watch on TV. I can get there in 12 minutes, 12 seconds. I can get there in 12 seconds. I've done it in 3.5-inch heels. I'll show you.
What's it like the first time you came in? Let's talk about personal. First time you came in, did you go, oh my God, this is so history. This is so historical.
You do feel the gravity and the enormity, but also the humility that comes with something like this. You know, I was raised by a single mom in a wonderful house of Italian women. And I think that it's the American dream writ large in many ways, but I think Donald Trump's ascendancy to the presidency is the American dream writ large. People have been saying for decades, Judge, that we want somebody who's has great experience, but not as a politician and not in government, and they got him. They made good on their self-avowed desire of many years. And for me, it's euphoric, but it's also tremendous responsibility.
When I was a DA, I was the first woman DA. There were a lot of people who had trouble just with the fact that I had bodyguards, security. There was a lot of resistance, a lot of hate, a lot of criticism, and that was in the 90s. What is it like for you now? You know, there's Sean Spicer, he's in front of cameras, and Reince Priebus, and yet you're the one that people are focused on. Why do you think that is? Why do you need round-the-clock security?
Well, there have been threats to me and my family, and I have 4 small children, 12, 8, and 7, who don't deserve to be a target of anything but love and affection and to have a normal childhood like anyone else. And it turns out that there are people who have a problem with women in power, and many of them are women, unfortunately. I mean, look at the ridicule I faced by wearing a Gucci coat to Donald Trump's inauguration. I have to laugh because he thought it was a beautiful coat. I got lots of compliments on it at the Pentagon.
Man, you worked so hard for so long. First woman to get a president elected. You're not entitled to wear an outfit that you think is patriotic. Whose business is it?
Well, frankly, it's no one's business,
right.
And that's one thing I want everybody to know. They all pretend that they're so independent-minded and we're such part of the sisterhood and we're all locking arms together. And it turns out it's not true. And I very tongue-in-cheek said to a reporter this week, hey, I apologize to the black stretch pants wearing women of America for adding a pop of color and panache to the inauguration.
Yeah, red, white,
but they
and
made
blue
fun of me,
while we're
everything from Paddington Bear, you should be a Barbie doll too. But I just want them to know you're wasting your breath because there's no way anyone is going to redefine or unravel me in 140 characters or less. Why do women feel better about themselves by putting someone down? We really have to reflect upon that. And I reflect upon it less as counselor to the president because it's not relevant. I reflect on it as a mother of 3 daughters who are 12, 8, and 7. And I've been trying to teach them, be impervious to your naysayers and critics and just focus on who you are and what your value is. And it's just so ironic to me that we spend billions of dollars a year on self-help books and strategies for self-growth and everything. How about just being kinder to each other? How about just being a better friend? Listen, you want to walk around in your yoga pants all day? That's your business. But don't insult me just because I added a little class to the inauguration.
What about your kids? Are you worried about them?
I'm a mother. Of course I'm worried about them. I'm an Italian mother. Of course I'm always worried about them. Jeanine, eat more, honey. Brush your teeth. Say your prayers. I'm worried about them because they are in the spotlight a little bit, even though George and I definitely shield them from that. We don't post pictures of them much anywhere. And they're big Trump fans. They've met the president, of course, and I think they really feel the blessing of being able to know what their mom's role is as part of this team. The other thing is they're all so different. They all reply so differently. My daughter Charlotte left me a note that I keep right there. She's 8. I love you, Mom. Thanks for saving the country, and I can't wait to see you be the first female president. She doesn't realize all I was doing was preserving her ability to be the first female president. My son, he's 12, the day after the election, said, Mom, I just want to know what data analytics you and your team had that made you see something in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania that the others did not, because we kept sending back. We had a big digital and data team, and all of you kept sending back Pence and Trump to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota for that matter, Michigan. So they've all approached it so differently. I told my daughter Claudia, who said, I don't want to come to Washington, D.C. and be known as Kellyanne Conway's daughter. And I said, if you cure cancer, honey, I'll be known as Claudia Conway's mother. And then, of course, the littlest one, Vanessa, she just thinks it's, I was telling her I was going on PBS or something, and she said, is that the NewsHour show? They're just they know so much more than I did when I was triple their age. Yeah. And so in many ways, it's a gift that way.
It is a gift. Kellyanne Conway, you're a gift. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.
The same.
David Avella and David Goodfriend, my political panel, is next. Time now for the political panel. Here with me in Washington, GOPAC Chairman David Avella and Democratic strategist David Goodfriend. Thank you both for being here. All right, don't have a lot of time, but let's go right to the ban. All right, my understanding is that this is an emergency stay that halts the executive order banning Muslims or banning entry to the U.S. from 7 majority Muslim countries by a federal judge from the Eastern District of New York, that an Obama appointee last year, that is nationwide.
That's right. So this is what happens when you do executive orders too fast without getting lawyers to vet them. I happened to help write executive orders when I worked in the White House.
Well, you mean the ones that Donald Trump is taking back? But let's just talk about this.
I worked in the Clinton White House, and what I can tell you is this is exactly the problem with a disorganized White House. He's doing this stuff to say I'm getting it done. The problem is when a federal judge looks at the law and undoes it, he hasn't gotten anything done.
You know what? With all due respect, David, I don't want to go into trashing anybody. I want to talk about a judge's authority to do a national stay as part of this emergency stay.
When President Obama's dreamers executive order was stayed by a federal judge. Remember when all those Republican attorneys general sued?
Right.
That was also...
That was national in scope.
It was national in scope. And sometimes what that means is the district judge can look at, as applied, it's violating, in this case, the due process clause of
nationwide.
Nationwide.
Okay, David, do you think that there's a chance, as you know, an emergency stay is something that requires, as one of the elements is a probability of winning. What do you think of this ban on this? It's a 120-day ban on 7 Muslim majority countries that, for whatever reason, the Trump White House thinks is or possibly a danger, and so these people need to be vetted. That doesn't mean that individuals like this U.S. Army interpreter who was allowed in on a case-by-case basis won't come in.
You had Rudy Giuliani on earlier. Trump has had a number of people, even at the Heritage Foundation, that helped him work on this ban so that we know who's coming into this country. So, look, there is probability that as it continues to go through the judicial system, it does get upheld. But look at all of what he has done this week, whether it's this, whether it's telling the generals to have a plan within 30 days on how to defeat ISIS, whether it's border security, all of it's focused on what he said he was going to do during the campaign, which was make Americans secure and safer.
Okay.
I think it's great that we have courts in this country. I mean, when President Obama overstepped his bounds in the views of conservatives, courts upheld them or didn't. And I think in this case, we all should be very glad that the Constitution has us using courts. They're all going to examine these things in a reasonable way under the Constitution.
But historically, presidents have had the ability to ban certain people from entering this country. This is nothing new.
No, of course
it's not. And the question is whether or not there is a nexus or a reasonable connection between what the president is intending to do. I suspect that there may be in a hearing, possibly a closed-door hearing, a nexus that the Trump administration may have to show between why this country and why this extreme vetting.
And as you asked Rudy Giuliani, why not Pakistan? Why not Saudi Arabia? Look, I think we're dancing around a bigger problem. And I think maybe you and I can even agree on this one. Part of the problem here is that we don't have a really good immigration system to begin with. And a majority of senators, Republicans and Democrats, passed an immigration compromise that died in the House. We ought to bring that back. We ought to reform our immigration system. This is exactly why.
But
I'll tell you exactly what that means.
Our border is secure, so that we know who's coming into this country.
I don't want to do comprehensive immigration reform. What I want to do is, I don't want to hear about that. I want to talk about the dangers to Americans by those either people coming here to hurt us. Look, we're dealing with a global problem, and that is ISIS. Whether they are seeking to engage these lone wolves in this country through social media or coming here, or children of refugees who are killing us.
And it looks like we just got the wrong countries. We just got the wrong countries. All the things
I don't know.
mentioned.
How do we know? Do we know the intelligence?
There is much belief that those are the countries, though, where the foreign fighters who are going out of the war-torn areas are going into those countries and then coming here. That's where experts would say that's why those 7 were picked. But it also goes back to why we need to have good border security. We have to know who is coming into this country.
No one has a right to come into the United States of America. You do not have that right. Last word, fast. Yes,
I like it.
Yes, no. I'm right.
There's a system that has to be, you have to follow to get in here.
We all
agree. They have to follow.
All right, because of breaking news, we had a short discussion, guys, and I apologize for that.
Judge.
David Avella, David, good friend. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Greg Gutfeld, show us next. See you next week. We're saying goodbye from the Capitol, Washington. Breaking tonight, President Trump not slowing down after a whirlwind week in the White House, and neither are the protesters. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us in our nation's capital tonight. We begin with breaking news. Hundreds of people at New York Kennedy's Airport and other airports protesting at this hour. They're demonstrating against the detainment of refugees who are being held after the president's executive action cracking down on immigration from Muslim-majority countries. We'll talk about all of this with Rudy Giuliani live in a moment. Plus, I'll take you inside Kellyanne Conway's White House office for a two-part interview tonight. But first, my opening statement. Like it or not, Our laws are about to be enforced. Those who live in sanctuary cities that harbor illegals are now teed up to lose federal law enforcement funding and protection. And each and every one of you has a decision to make. Everyone in those 300-odd sanctuary counties and cities. So, what's more important to you? Would you rather protect illegals who flaunted our laws to come here and some who committed crimes while here, or law-abiding American citizens who shouldn't have to lose police protection because they happen to live in a sanctuary city? Now, if you believe in America and everything we stand for, it's time to demand an end to these criminal enclaves. In his first whirlwind week, President Trump signed an executive order directing the withholding of grant money from sanctuary cities who refuse to comply with federal immigration laws. The re-implementation of secure communities, where state and local governments share fingerprints to help actually identify undocumented immigrants, to force other countries to actually take back criminals by using leverage like withholding U.S. visas, and a new victim program for Americans who have been victimized by illegals, and now weekly statistics of Americans victimized by illegals living in sanctuary cities, and finally, an end to the Obama policy of catch and release at the border. So, you can march and you can hate and you can shame and you can demonize the 45th president. But I've got news for you. Law and order is back in the West. And namby-pamby liberal mayors like de Blasio in New York, Ed Lee in San Francisco, and Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, who say their policies simply improve relations between the immigrant community and law enforcement, are now putting American citizens in jeopardy of losing law enforcement protection. Now, I admire the kumbaya goal of community law enforcement identifying criminal activity by illegals, but it doesn't work. 32 years as a prosecutor, judge, and DA in a county of about 1 million tells me otherwise. Case in point. An illegal beat up and robbed every Friday, every payday. I never heard a word about him.